I was not prepared for what I found in that tunnel. It stretched on for over a mile in the back of what should have been the 3x3 interior of a porta-pot. I'd been led there by a flying brain, and what I found still succeeded in surprising me. I had planned to come prepared, but there was ultimately little that I thought would be useful. I packed a store-bought survival kit, ropes and flares and whatnot, and a heavy metal snow shovel. The only weapon I really thought would accomplish anything. The eggheads only ever responded to bludgeoning, and even then, that only seemed to speed the hatching process. No way could I have hit one of the brain flies with a bullet, but in an enclosed space, I suppose I could give one a good thwack. Besides the fundamental impossibility of its existence, the tunnel was wholly unremarkable. A slightly rounded, concrete corridor interrupted only by squarish, rusted grates. The distant droning escalated as I progressed. Soon enough, the tunnel gave way to what I suppose I could describe as a sort of factory floor. I don't know how long I spent just standing there, slack-jawed, my brain fumbling over itself to process everything I was seeing. Think of everything that comes to mind when you hear machinery. Turning cogs, conveyor belts, churning pistons, whirring fans, mechanisms of every conceivable design, and then some. Cranking and pumping away in a space so vast that no floor, ceiling, or walls could be seen in the distant darkness. Now imagine if somebody threw all of that away and hired clowns to remodel. 50 or 60 years of neglect later, you might have stumbled something close to the Burton-esque hell that I stumbled upon. Everything alternated between cold, grimy steel and a sort of Candyland motif, with vividly striped plumbing and polka-dotted ductwork. I jumped as a shower of sparks flew from an immense robotic arm overhead. Its rusted metal casing and tangled red wiring a stark contrast to its Mickey Mouse gloved hand. I found myself retreating a few steps into the tunnel as I reached out, joints groaning with neglect, and pulled a tremendous lever with a shining pink knob, an action inexplicably punctuated by a sound like a quacking duck. Instantly, a checkerboard-looking conveyor belt squealed to life, ushering forth a procession of what may have been dead pigs. Although I couldn't see their heads or even the ragged stumps where any may have once been attached. With a ridiculous slide whistle sound, another huge object rose into view. An angular, pink and purple funnel the size of a swimming pool. One by one, the mystery carcasses tumbled off the belt and into the huge trumpet, each followed by torturous rendering sound and a brief but voluminous geyser of thick brown blood. The stink was overpowering. Mesmerized by the spectacle of Willy Wonka's sausage factory, I nearly fell on my ass as a large object shot over my shoulder. A brainfly. It had come from the tunnel behind me and narrowly dodged my head by a few inches. As my heart cautiously restarted itself, I filed away the knowledge that I was still of no obvious concern to these things, even intruding as I was into what may have been their headquarters. Or at least an extension of it. I wasn't sure whether or not that was reassuring. The parasite had banked sharply upwards as it left the tunnel, but I could still hear this distant fluttering, the distinct fluttering of the big membranous wings between the whirring, grinding, and occasional goofy honking of the factory. I craned my head, waiting for the irregular crackling of the equipment to eliminate the gloom. Sure enough, I could see hundreds, thousands of glistening pinkish shapes passing a good 10 to 15 stories overhead. all in the same direction. I followed. A network of catwalks made navigation relatively easy, and I was able to keep sight of the concrete wall I'd emerged from. Tunnel entryways were frequent, brain fries periodically zipping through to join their brothers and sisters above. Even if I lost my way, I was confident that another tunnel might empty back into the real world, and probably in a populated area. They needed bodies, after all. I shuddered. Not at the thought, but and how casually the thought had come. I was growing too used to this. Uncomfortably comfortable. The Szechuan slaughterhouse offered no shortage of grotesque spectacles. Rivers of meat slush oozed their way along metallic chutes as wide as city streets. Putrescent corpses bobbing along sluggishly in the current and sometimes against it. Towering circular saws loomed like macabre Ferris wheels, chewing their way through slabs of solid, fresh meat that could have fed whole towns. What living thing could even have that much flesh on it? A steady splattering turned out to be a blender the size of a small house. Literally just a scaled-up household blender. It even had a giant-sized dial, albeit with one labeled setting, Excite. I suppose you could describe the endless truckloads of live white mice pouring into it as excited, in a sense. I passed bubbling lakes of entrails, fermenting tanks of gasping fish heads, mountains of broken, bloody bone. An endless procession of meat hooks ferried a bizarre menagerie of carcasses along a tangled railway system, from skinned cattle to things I doubt you would have found in any textbook. There were insect-like forms as big as a man, tentacle masses dribbling oddly colored ichor in something I can only describe as a hairy swordfish. Their cargo was twisted. Was so twisted. It was some time before I even noticed what was wrong with the meat hooks themselves. They had no wheels, but clung to their rails by metallic spider-like legs, tip-tapping along with blinding speed. The more I advanced, the louder the wet, slimy flapping of the alien flock. More and more streams were converging into a single mass migration, their collective wings nearly drowning out the buzzing, grinding, and splattering of the factory. I still wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I knew I was getting closer.